This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, is telling everyone, let's face it in therapy. By talking or texting with a supportive, licensed therapist at Talkspace, you can face whatever is holding you back, whether it's mental health symptoms, relationship drama, past trauma, bad habits, or another challenge that you need support to work through. It's easy to sign up. Just go to Talkspace.com and you'll be paired with a provider, typically within 48 hours. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule. Plus, Talkspace is in-network with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. Make your mental health a priority and start today. If you're not covered by insurance, get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80.
Fan.
Gleeman in studio. If you have questions, hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. It's 64686 or observations. Either will indeed work. I'm wondering, as we welcome you back, thanks for coming into studio as always, whether you have, whether the most recent piece you wrote, which I think was Clemens' kid, right? Is it Cody Clemens?
Yeah, Cody Clemens.
One of your more recent pieces. Was it directed at Lavelle Enio III?
All my pieces are directed at it.
Because last Friday, I brought up Clemens. I said, he's been pretty impactful. What's the story on this guy? He was very dismissive. He said, it's cute. It's a cute little story. Not going to last. He's not that good. Marathon, not sprint. All I know, he continues. Isn't his OPS over 1,000?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I mean,
how do we explain this guy? And who is he, other than Roger Clemens' kid?
The last thing I would ever want to do is take Lavelle off the hook for criticism, deserved or otherwise. Believe me, one of my favorite things to do in the press box, in the 3 times a year Lavelle shows up.
I can imagine.
See, there we go, right there.
Wow,
is to mock him.
Wow.
However,
that was quite a salvo, right?
Cigars aren't going to smoke themselves, Aaron.
He has been there a few times lately because they'll play before the Wolves, so he'll come,
stop by
have
for a
little lunch or dinner, head over to the Wolves. But he wasn't necessarily wrong. Like, it's been another 10 days or whatever probably since you talked to him, and in those 10 days, Cody Clemens has had, a walk-off and 2 more homers or whatever it is. It's been incredible. It's still, 50, 60 at-bats or something, and he's 29. He has been known, and he had a younger brother who never made the majors but played in the minors, too. He might have had 2. They all start with K for strikeout for Roger. This is a guy who's bounced around. Look at how the Twins got him, which was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Phillies barely played. He made the Phillies out of spring training, got like 7 at-bats in 2 weeks. They designate him for assignment. He's headed to the waiver wire, and the Twins at that point had lost Correa and Castro and I think one other guy, Keishel, probably from the infield. They just needed warm bodies. And so Clemens and a guy, Jonah Bride, who's also still on the team, they traded cash considerations for them, which can mean $1. It usually means a few $1,000s, but it's just a way to jump the waiver wire line. They add him, and it's like, okay, this guy might be here for a week, 2 weeks, till everyone gets healthy. And now, he had 3 huge homers, the walk-off double yesterday in the first game against Cleveland. I'm not ready to, announce they should sign him into an extension. Although the beauty of being a AAA journeyman is he's going to be, if he is actually good, like good, he's minimum salary next year, minimum salary the year after that, because he doesn't have any service time because he's bounced around so much.
In other words, the Twins kind of player.
Yeah, well, that helps too. Yeah.
We just got a release from them. They actually did sign him to the minimum for the next 8 years.
There we go. It's been one of the more remarkable things. I'm a big believer in the line between like a great AAA player and a useful role player in the majors is so thin that it's often nothing. It's a lot about, first of all, just getting the opportunity. Right. But second of all, even these guys who are 28, 29, AAA, quad A, they get called, sometimes they get 30 at-bats. Mickey Gasper was a guy earlier this season, same thing. He crushes AAA. He got 15 at-bats with the Twins. And everyone goes, it looks like he was terrible. He can't hit the ball at the infield. That might be his chance. With Cody Clemens and the Twins, he got 30 at-bats. He just happened to hit 350 with 3 homers. And so now it's like, that window's a little bigger now. And, will he turn back into a pumpkin at some point? Yeah, his track record suggests yes. But
how old is he?
29. He just turned 29. Yeah. He's got like 170 games in the majors with the Tigers, the Phillies, now the Twins. Not great numbers, some power. Pretty good numbers at AAA with a lot of power, but, he's a big strikeout guy, low batting average guy. But, you watch him, he's made, it seems like, some adjustments swing-wise, although he was asked on the road trip, I wasn't on it, but I saw some quotes where they were like, your exit velocity and your bat speed are up too much. And he was like, yeah, I haven't done anything. So that's just me swinging hard and connecting. You watch his swing, he definitely has left-handed power. He's had 3 or 4 big homers. He drives a lot of balls into the corner, the right field corner. I could see him being a power threat. I think what's going to happen with him as, he gets more of a runway here is the strikeouts and the batting average are going to be a big negative. But if you hit for enough left-handed power, and he's also proven to be very versatile, if not good, defensively. He's played second, first, both corner outfield spots. He can play some third. So that's what they got him for initially is we just need somebody who can play positions. And now he's actually hitting him. He's been hitting 4th or 5th in this lineup. Now we're going to start to hopefully see Correa back. I think tomorrow. Matt Wallner is on a rehab stint with the Saints, so he could be early next week. Hopefully Buxton comes back relatively soon from his concussion too. Then there's going to be a little bit of a roster crunch. But among all these, I mentioned Jonah Bride, Mickey Gasper, all these sort of bit players they've gone through, Clemens' job is not in any danger. They can find a spot. He can hit his way onto the team and stay on the team. But, I hope Lavelle is wrong that he doesn't. He'll if he could be like a 250 hitter who can play everywhere and pop 15 to 20 homers.
You take that.
That's coming way down from what we've seen, but that can also be a very valuable, useful role player.
Baseball is weird because I still feel like it's the one sport where you can see these sorts of players pop up and run through a stretch where they look, like maybe they're better than they really are. I don't think we see this that much in football, pro football. I don't think we see it this much, I guess occasionally in pro basketball, but I feel like baseball, and I guess the variable is hitting is weird in that everyone's, for whatever reason, some guy gets on a roll a little bit and maybe he has a couple of lucky hits in there where his eyes are closed. And he hit one ball the other night, they right down the placed one, down the third base line. You could say that's having some bat control to say I'm going to go where
but there's some good fortune in there. But there's some
good fortune, and it's the one sport because we even see this in the postseason where a guy, no one is a utility player, becomes highly influential on who ends up winning a big series.
Yes, if you go look at, to your point, I agree completely. You go look at like World Series MVP or ALCS MVP, that 50 names long. Well, go look at the NBA Finals MVP. They're all Hall of Famers, basically. You go look at World Series MVP or ALC, it's like, David X the side and David Freese. Because yes, in baseball, when the samples get small, anything can happen in baseball. And, I guess NBA was like Jeremy Lin, the Linsanity run.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
That'd
the
be a good
closest
example.
comp
Yes.
to this.
Yes.
But even that, like scoring 30 or 40, let's say, in an NBA game, it so rarely happens to someone who isn't actually a good player. Right. But in baseball, role players, AAA guys hit 2 home runs in a game all the time. It's what, like you said, what makes baseball weird. I also think what makes it fun to analyze. Yes. And it also lends itself to paying attention to AAA numbers and to try to translate, we call it will his bat translate from AAA to the majors? And because it hasn't for Clemens through age 28 doesn't mean it can't at age 29. But also, I just think there are so many guys in the majors, especially, platoon guys, backups, all that stuff, who got there because they got a little window of opportunity and they played well for 3 weeks, where there are an equal number of guys who got that same opportunity and hit, 130, got sent back to the minors and were never seen from again. And Clemens, I think maybe in part because the name has value, but also just versatility and he's been around the block, has gotten opportunities in the past and has not made much with them, with the Tigers and the Phillies, and now he's getting another chance, and it's came at a perfect time for the Twins because their lineup hasn't been very good all season. But then once they got rocked by all those injuries in the infield, they just didn't have anybody to put out there because even someone like Keisha, who they called up and was great, he breaks his forearm, and it's like, okay, now we're on plan D, basically. So, I mean, he has saved them. I looked, the thing I wrote that you were talking about, I looked at who was the MVP of the 13-game winning streak in terms of wins above replacement, RBIs, all that, and he was him. I mean, he had 3 huge homers, including the one in Boston and the one in Baltimore that basically were game winners for them. He's played all over the place. He's come through in the clutch. So, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be the MVP at the end of the season of the Twins, but man, he has saved their butts in a spot where they just ran out of competent bats.
Who's older, Clemens or McCusker? McCusker's younger, he's
McCusker,
27?
I think just turned 27.
27.
But he's another guy who, his story is much different. He came from the independent leagues. He was undrafted. But he's a guy who at 26, 27 has been crushing at AAA, and the Twins were very hesitant to call him up. Even though he was just hitting 350 with power for the Saints, it took injuries to get him up. Now, I'm a little skeptical that they're actually going to give him much playing time. I think probably when Wallner comes back, that might signal the end of whatever run he gets. He's only had 2 at-bats so far. But that's another example of this guy could probably crush AAA for the rest of his life. But if he doesn't do a lot with the 25 at-bats he might get here,
might never get another shot.
It might never get another shot. And that can be frustrating for the player, I'm sure, because it's like 25 at-bats in baseball, anything can happen. But you don't really have a choice. You either kind of put up or shut up there. And I think he's another example of that, although I don't know that he's even going to get 25, 30, 50 at-bats, McCusker.
Who is taller, Ober or McCusker?
Ober, I think, by an inch.
By an inch?
They are,
he looks enormous at the plate. I mentioned we had Rocco on a couple days ago, and I'm immediately thinking, because I'm an old guy, Dave Kingman. I mean, the bat looked like a toothpick in his hands, for God's sake. He looks like he's taller than, I think he's listed at 6'8", right? Whatever.
Yeah, 6'8".
He looks even taller than that.
50. He's huge. I think he's the tallest because Aaron Judge, I think, is 6'7". And I am definitely not saying he's going to come anywhere close to Aaron Judge. But if you watch him, the swing is kind of similar.
That won't stop you from being in the tournament. But that's okay.
But I've been left out of the bracket.
Oh, is that right?
That's
years. Unfortunate.
So I'm pining for it, although maybe that eliminates me from consideration. But he has a lot of opposite field power, which you see from Aaron Judge a lot, where it's like it looks like he almost mishits it or swings late, but they just have so much raw strength that they can just kind of push the ball out to right field. So I'm similar to Clemens. I'm not the biggest believer in oh my God, Carson McCusker is someone they should build around for the next 5 years. But I do like when teams give these AAA performers, standout, true stars at AAA, some opportunity to prove it or not. And so I would like to see them give McCusker a little bit of a runway here, in part because I just think right-handed power, it's not like they're swimming in it. So I'm a little bit skeptical, but you don't know. I mean, it could be 2 games like Clemens. They weren't planning to give Clemens this much leeway either.
True. That's true. Are you old enough to remember Kingman?
Yeah.
You're too young, probably.
I remember, he got a ball caught in the actual dome itself, I remember.
Is that the guy? You might be right about that.
But I mean, I remember Frank Howard. This is before. Yeah. This might even be before your time.
He was wider too.
Yeah,
big,
but he was a monster guy.
Monster.
I mean, there was a guy, Richie Sexton, who played for the Mariners, who was huge. It's definitely like a player type where it's like right-handed, big power, but it comes with a lot of strikeouts.
That's true.
That's what makes Judge so amazing, because early in Judge's career, everyone thought, well, we can exploit how big his strike zone is because he's just got to cover so much area. And so he did strike out a lot, but he's just improved that so much that now he can just hit 450 feet off everything. McCusker is not going to be that player, but he has made some actual, if you dig a little below the surface on the numbers, he's not going to get 350, just like Clemens is not going to hit 350. But the power from McCusker has been legitimate.
Do you know Kingman had prodigious power. He could strike out a lot too, but he hit a lot. I don't know how many home runs he hit, but he had a lot.
Almost 500.
Was it that many?
I mean, he was a modern player who was like 40 years early.
That's true. Ahead of his time.
People, and honestly, I remember when I did a book on the best Twins of all time, and years ago, and I was looking up source material on Harmon Killebrew, who now is remembered as one of the great Twins ever, one of the great sluggers ever. But in the 60s, when he was putting up those numbers and also leading the league in strikeouts, every columnist, every article was like, oh, this guy only hits 240, he strikes out so much, who cares about the power? It's useless. Well, if you would have taken him and put him in 2025 Harmon Killebrew.
Heroic.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been like, this guy's the perfect hitter, basically.
For the era. No, but the most infamous Dave Kingman story, I wonder if you've ever heard it. By all accounts,
not a great dude.
Capable of being a miserable human being.
That's the one thing I know about him.
And I think this was in 1986, so this goes back a ways. He's 37 years old. He's playing for the Oakland Athletics. And he's apparently feuding with a sports writer who I remember named Susan Fornoff, the Sacramento Bee. And he sends her a gift in a pink box. Okay. He sends her a live rat in a box. The rat wore a tag that said, "My name is Sue." Now imagine this in 2025, it'd be major. As it is, I think he got fined like $3,500. But the famous Kingman moment was, you'd think at some point, a little humanity would say, you go, God, that's a stupid thing to do. I apologize. Kingman instead said, I pulled practical jokes on other people, and I didn't apologize to them. So to this day, I think he's still alive. I don't even know. But I mean, that's about when it comes to, sports writing, I mean, that's pretty dastardly, as we say in the business.
I like when he says, I've done this before, that's just setting up a class action suit where he's like, yeah, you guys should all get together, the people I've pranked. Well, I mean, yeah, that's, I've written some critical things about players and managers and owners and teams and all that stuff.
Nobody sent you a box yet with anything, living or dead?
I think there's a perception where people are always like, what was the reaction when you got that? Yeah. And I'm not saying the reaction's always good, but nobody's ever handed me a box with anything in it. Although, one of my favorite movies is Seven. I don't know if you've seen the end of that. I don't want to spoil that. But
I remember.
Speaking of boxes with things in it.
That's a good
point. So maybe next time I write about the pole ads or something like that, that'll be waiting for me. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Dastardly.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Kingman thing was he hit a pop-up, like a sky-high pop-up at the Dome, and it just never came down.
Nobody ever seen it.
And so then the next, I don't know if they called it a double or what they called it, and then the next morning they got it down.
They found it.
And it just fell, and I forget if it was Mickey Hatcher maybe, caught it, made a big show of I'm going to catch this the next day. But yeah, Dave Kingman, there's been a lot of players where people are like, yeah, he hits a lot of homers across eras, where it's like, this guy hits a ton of homers, but he wasn't all that good. I think Dave Kingman, even in that era, is the prime, because he didn't draw any walks, struck out a ton, didn't hit for a high average, was terrible defensively, as you're talking about, not the greatest teammate or person, but man, he hit some monster home runs.
Where does one find a live rat?
That's
I mean, a mouse, but how do you find, even if you want to do something that asinine, that classless? Where do you find I got a clubhouse attendant. Johnny, help me find. Can you help me find a live rat I want to send to this sports writer?
There's certain, if you go to a pet store, and you're like, I need
they have them? Okay.
But
rats?
Some kind of feeding snakes and things like that.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Dave Kingman, by the way, 76 years old. Last check, lives in his native Lake Tahoe.
Oh, okay.
And owned a local tennis club.
Really?
Sure.
According to the New York Daily News.
Okay, yeah. He played for a bunch of teams. I think he was with the Cubs for a while.
He was.
Among others, wasn't he?
He was with everybody, yeah.
I think I remembered a moment or two with him. All right. Let's take the bottom of the hour break. Sam Mitchell's coming up in about a half hour. I want you to mull over, I think, the essential question surrounding the Twins, and I think this is probably what Twins fans who have said and vowed, I'm not coming back. I don't care. I'm not coming back. Whether they can believe something is awakening in this team, that they're not going to keep having, one would assume, 13-game winning streaks, but are they doing some stuff here where you could see this being sustained against better competition than much of this winning streak has been about.
Fan and BigDeck.com. I want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. 4 o'clock keyword is bank. Go to KFAN.com and enter.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, is telling everyone, let's face it in therapy. By talking or texting with a supportive, licensed therapist at Talkspace, you can face whatever is holding you back, whether it's mental health symptoms, relationship drama, past trauma, bad habits, or another challenge that you need support to work through. It's easy to sign up. Just go to Talkspace.com and you'll be paired with a provider, typically within 48 hours. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule. Plus, Talkspace is in-network with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. Make your mental health a priority and start today. If you're not covered by insurance, get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80.
A keyword bank.
Gleeman. So can we trust that this team is back for good? Is that tenuous at best? What's the best way for you, because this is part of your job, to evaluate what the hell's been going on the last several weeks?
Well, it's funny because if you look, they're right now, I want to say 27 and 22, which is like a high 80, low 90 pace. I'm not great at math, but that's basically what the expectation or the projections were. Even the Vegas over-under, I think, was like 84, 85. They're not far off from that. It's just the roller coaster way they got to it leads to questions like yours, which is legit. I will say that I don't have a lot of confidence in their lineup being significantly better than we've seen. Although they are hopefully going to get healthier. Wallner coming back would be big for them. Obviously, Buxton and Correa is a big question mark. But I do think that I felt the rotation, especially coming into the season, was going to be their biggest strength and one of the biggest strengths in the league. And that's proven true. And the bullpen, after some rough moments with like Griffin Jacks early on, has joined them in being, I think, top 3 in the league in ERA and some other metrics and stuff. So I do think it reminds me a little of the first half of 2023, where they had Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray atop the rotation, and the bullpen was pretty good. And the offense wasn't great, but they would win, 3-2, 4-1, those sorts of games. And then what happened in the second half of last year is guys like Wallner and Julian and Royce Lewis got called up and became, star-level guys in the second half, and that propelled them to what is probably their most successful overall season in 20 years because they won in the playoffs. I don't know that I have more questions about the lineup's ability to kind of make that jump in the second half of the season, in part because I just don't think they're ever going to be fully healthy. I mean, we've been waiting for that with this group for 5 years. But I think in terms of are they legit, I think the pitching staff and the rotation especially, again, barring injuries, are definitely legit. I mean, I think they have Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober is about as good as any trio fronting any rotation in the league. I think Chris Paddock has greatly exceeded my expectations. And then I also think they have guys like Zebby Matthews, who hasn't had a bunch of success yet, and David Festa, who's now had some arm fatigue at AAA. But they have higher upside depth than some previous Twins teams, where if one or two of the veteran starters get hurt, in past years, it's like, well, we're turning into some journeyman, whatever. And now it's like we actually have some legit upside prospects to step in. The bullpen depth has been pretty strong. Especially once Jax got back on track, because I think people forget how good he's been the past 2 or 3 years. So I think the pitching is legit. I think the lineup is the question mark, even if healthy. And if we assume they're never going to be healthy fully, then it's really a question mark.
So on the 2 concussion kids, where are we at on Correa and Buxton?
It sounds like they haven't made an official move because neither of them, they're eligible for the first time to come off the IL, the concussion 7-day IL for tomorrow night's game against the Royals. It sounds like Correa will be active and in the lineup for that. It sounds like Buxton will not be. Part of the complication with Buxton, and these are brain injuries. It's not, they don't heal this at the same rate. I mean, Twins fans know that, unfortunately, all too well with Mauer, Morneau, Span, going back. But Buxton has a history of concussions. He's had 2 or 3, including one in the minors. So that complicates it. But he also has a history of migraine headaches separate from the concussions, just as a physical thing. So kind of figuring out, are these, blurred vision, sensitivity to light, headaches, is this due entirely to the concussion? And their trainer, Nick Paparesta, talked a little bit about this the other day. With Buxton, there's a little bit more, need to wait it out and have him be, you need both guys completely free. Because the thing I've learned through this, because I hadn't covered them when they had a prime, concussion situation like this, certainly with two all-star players like this, it's really driven by the league. Like there's only so much that the team can do before they get out of the protocol.
Right.
So, we haven't been able to talk to players, which is fine, but that's league driven. Like they don't want you doing anything else. They've been around the team, but there's only, you can only go through certain drills, or you can't be activated until the league clears you to be activated, which will require, having no symptoms for a period of, 24, 48 hours or whatever. But it sounds like Correa is good, which is interesting because at the time, like as the collision happened last Thursday, Correa left right away and looked to be in worse shape and was placed on the IL immediately. Buxton stayed in the game for an inning and then actually stayed on the active roster for an extra day, but it's going to be Correa who comes back first. I think there's some hope that Buxton could be back, if not, probably not during this next 3 games, but they go on a 10-game road trip after that.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about Correa. Once he gets healthy, and as you say, we use that term advisedly because maybe he's never going to be healthy all the time again. But I want to talk about him as a hitter. Everybody agrees this guy is one hell of a major league player. He's aesthetically very pleasing. He's terrific generally defensively. But speaking of Laval, he's written this a couple times, sort of challenging Correa offensively, that the club has never really, for a consistent long basis, gotten everything that Correa is supposed to represent. So do you agree with that? And has he just reached a point where the expectations on Correa, even with the money that he gets, are going to have to change? Or is there another gear that you think he can get back to offensively?
Well, we've seen it at times. We saw it, 2023 going into the playoffs after he dealt with plantar fasciitis the whole time. Then he deals with plantar fasciitis again. We saw, he made the All-Star team. He had one of the best halves of his career last year.
That's true.
And then basically missed the entire second half. This year, to me, just from the naked eye, let alone the numbers, which are not good for him offensively, his swing just hasn't looked the same to me. It's looked very much like he's trying to, almost like when there's a 3-2 count and the batter's just trying to foul off pitches. So many of his swings have been just trying to shoot the ball the other way, which I'm not saying is a negative on its own, but I think kind of what you're getting to is where's the power, where's the run production and all that. But I will say this about him. I think, one, the reputation he gained in the playoffs with Houston raised the bar for what people think of as Carlos Correa. But then another factor, and I think Mauer dealt with this a little bit too, there's a difference between being an exceptional hitter for a Gold Glove shortstop or a Gold Glove catcher and being an exceptional hitter, period.
Good point.
And Correa is a very, very good hitter, and Mauer was a great hitter. But what made them really great was
at the position
Mauer won batting titles and was a catcher. Right. Correa puts up an 850 OPS and is a Gold Glove shortstop. Correa is not one of the top, and really never has been, at the Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani level of hitter. And so I think that can be tough to, wrap your head around as a fan sometimes, or even writing about it, where it's like a great season for him would be hitting 280, 25 homers, playing Gold Glove, and in terms of all-around value, the stuff that like WAR, wins above replacement, looks at, that's going to be a massive MVP caliber season. But he's not going to drive in 130 runs, kind of the old school way of like, this guy's an elite hitter. So I think he's dealt with that. But I also just think in general for him, he just hasn't been consistent, and I think a lot of that is easy to link to health. Basically 2 full years with the plantar fasciitis, including missing almost the second half of last year entirely. I think this year with the wrist has been an issue for him. But, he has been in the lineup prior to this concussion pretty much every game, and he's shown some signs the 2 weeks leading up to the concussion. I think he hit 290, but it was a lot of singles, not much power. The power is really, until I see that, and until I see him pulling fly balls hard, which we really haven't seen all season, I'm not that interested in like what's his batting average, how many singles does he have, because the thing that you're getting at is what people want to see from him in the middle of the lineup is when 2 guys are on, hit a 3-run homer. And he's done that, but that's not his calling card. He's more of, like you said, an aesthetically pleasing kind of all-around skill set guy. And I will say this, as much as he struggled defensively this year, and as much as his swing to me has not looked right.
So he doesn't look right to you defensively either, compared to his standard?
I think he's been phenomenal defensively.
Oh, I thought, okay.
And that's what makes it so confusing.
Okay.
Is like, I was so worried about his heel and his foot off the plantar fasciitis, and he's lost some speed. He's pretty slow for a shortstop. I think this is as good as he's looked defensively, and the numbers mostly bear that out, which makes the offensive struggles all the more confusing because it's like, well, clearly his feet are fine because he's moving around great defensively, which makes me think either he's just aged quickly offensively, the wrist is a problem, or he's tried to tinker with his swing and it's not had the greatest results yet.
Who is Royce Lewis going to be when he grows up? Where are we on him?
Well, when I was talking about not having a lot of faith in the lineup, I mean, Lewis is a huge part of that.
Gotta be.
The version you're getting, and even setting aside the injuries, because he's been as injured as everyone, we just haven't seen. He's shown some signs since coming back the last week or so. And he would have had a 2-homer game if Churio, the center fielder in Milwaukee, and they probably would have had
the streak would have continued.
14-game winning streak. Yeah. So I don't want to dismiss that, but he struggled mightily down the stretch. On a team full of guys who fell apart in the last 6 weeks last year, he was at the forefront of that. Seemed to just wear down physically and a little bit mentally too. And so that was one of the big questions coming into the season is what version are we going to get? But then he gets hurt in spring training. He misses the first month. And so now he's almost like in a spring training mode now, kind of trying to round back into form. He has the biggest, spectrum of like a good result and a bad result. Because we've seen when he's locked in and he's still young, and I actually think he's looked pretty decent defensively since coming back. He's played like 165 games total in his Twins career over, 4 seasons. He's got 35 homers, 110 RBIs, good overall numbers. But until he gets back to the point that he was when he was hitting a grand slam every other week, the memory people have is the last 6 weeks of last season, the spring training injury, and then what we've seen this year, which has been kind of hit or miss. But I mean, that he might be the biggest X factor, setting aside the health, just in terms of overall production, even if he's able to stay healthy. Because, I mean, he just hasn't looked the same. And he's had so many injuries that I worry about, like, is the physical toll of, like, he's no longer as fast as he was.
Right.
Maybe are you losing some issue there? But, I mean, I do have some faith in him coming back. And look, if they can get Wallner back, which is coming soon, they're going to get Correa back, I think, tomorrow. They can get Buxton back and Royce Lewis clicking. This lineup I'm not saying it doesn't have the potential to be good. I'm just saying how many years in a row with this same kind of core of players can we say, hey, if healthy and clicking, this will be good. It's like, well, okay, we're on year 3 or year 4 of waiting for that.
Let's get one more pause in. I got a couple more Twins questions, and we'll talk about your favorite pro basketball team, of course, back in action tonight, Game 2 against Oklahoma City. More Aaron Gleeman in studio. Sam Mitchell will join at the top of the 5.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, is telling everyone, let's face it in therapy. By talking or texting with a supportive, licensed therapist at Talkspace, you can face whatever is holding you back, whether it's mental health symptoms, relationship drama, past trauma, bad habits, or another challenge that you need support to work through. It's easy to sign up. Just go to Talkspace.com and you'll be paired with a provider, typically within 48 hours. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule. Plus, Talkspace is in-network with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. Make your mental health a priority and start today. If you're not covered by insurance, get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80.
Clock out. We know, Aaron Gleeman, that the division is improved from what might be the salad days that we remember, where if at any point in the season you had a 13-game winning streak, you're going to be in first place by 6 games. No matter what you'd done before then, even if you'd started 7-13. We know it's tougher. I don't know if it's really tough. You can tell us. But is this a team that you think, with that challenge, can be a factor in the wild card chase, fringe wild card team? I doubt you think they're a team that could fight for the division, or do you think the other teams are going to come back to the pack?
I mean, Detroit is really the only team so far that's jumped out. I think they have the best record in the American League. So it depends a little bit on how much faith people have in them. I mean, I think this division is much better than, like you said, it used to be for decades. But I think, 90 wins might still take it. But the really fortunate thing is the change to the playoff system where now 6 teams per league make it. You have the 3 wild card. In general, that 3rd wild card spot or even the 2nd one has been, mid 80s for wins, sometimes even less than that. So that's definitely gettable. I mean, right now, I think the Twins are in the first or second wild card. I think if the season ended today, they might be hosting a first-round series.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
So that's how low the bar gets, especially this early.
Yeah.
But 85, 88 wins that will definitely get you into the AL playoffs. I think they're certainly capable of that. The division's better, but I think it's more above average teams. And you have 4 of them, really. Everybody but the White Sox at this point, which it was similar last year, too. I mean, they had more playoff teams than any division last year. So but I don't think it's these world-beating teams. You look back at some of these like old AL East situations where they'd have 100-something win second place team. I don't think that's the case. So the Twins, they dug such a deep hole that it took winning 13 in a row to kind of get stabilized. But now that they're here, there's nothing that stops them from just playing like an 85, 88 win team, making the playoffs. And then I keep bringing back 2023. I mean, if you have strong starting pitching, you can make a playoff run. Especially, if you're just talking about 1 round or 2 rounds or something like that. And I think this team is set up largely to do that. I mean, Pablo Lopez is a holdover from that. Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober in the bullpen. If you hit at all, I definitely think this can be a playoff team. And I think at this point, they're probably at worst, I don't know, a coin flip to get one of the 6 playoff spots.
Let's talk a little bit about your favorite basketball team. They're down 1-0, as you know. What was your view going into this series? And has it been altered in any meaningful way on the basis of what took place in Game 1?
So coming into the playoffs, I thought OKC was by far the best team in either league. I was actually thinking about wagering at the start for them to win it, but the line wasn't
good enough to make it.
They were pretty big favorites.
Yeah.
Then I watched them in the first couple rounds, and I'm like, starting to doubt myself. Not that they didn't play well, but they weren't dominating.
They didn't look unbeatable,
especially last round, to the extent I thought. And so I was like, oh, this is unfortunate. Because now I'm like, I think I'm right about them, maybe, unfortunately, at the Wolves' expense. On the other hand, I think the Wolves have shown a lot over the past several years when they've had a lot of success, but they almost need to get dropped down to get back up. And I'm hoping that's the case here, where, you come off the previous series win.
Yes.
They didn't really. I went to the closeout game against Golden State. Golden State just couldn't put up much of a fight, really. I mean, they tried, but they just didn't have the firepower. And so maybe you needed a situation where you step up in weight class. OKC on the road kind of tells you like, oh, we're still a great team, and maybe this will allow Edwards and the Wolves in general to step back up into the series. I'm hopeful for that. But also, I mean, OKC, they got the literal MVP. Their defense to me is the most like. The fastest, most athletic.
He cheats,
handsy.
But he's a literal MVP.
Yes.
Okay.
And their ability to push turnovers into points at the other end, I feel like puts the Wolves at a specific disadvantage, like personnel-wise. But the other thing is, if the guys that have been making shots for the Wolves all season, DiVincenzo, Naz Reid especially, make shots, they're in that game. Although I do worry about the being able to defend without fouling, because we also saw in that game, Gobert picked up 2 fouls immediately. Yeah. They were basically half the rotation was in foul trouble the whole game. And that's not an excuse, but that does change who's playing. We saw Jalen Clark had to get into the game. So I don't know. I feel like the key to this series is
hit more shots.
You got to make open shots.
Yeah.
I mean, make or miss league. That's always the cliche. But the Wolves bench going from one of their biggest strengths during the season to a huge negative, particularly relative to OKC's bench, which I thought played great. I mean, they had bench units go on some of these big runs.
Yeah, they did.
And so if you're not going to make open shots, which has been your thing all season on three-pointers, and your bench is not going to be an advantage, I don't think you're going to beat the number 1 seed with the MVP. But I do think their chances are far better than the final score of Game 1 looks.
Do you believe they need more from Anthony Edwards?
Yeah,
what did you think of him in Game 1?
This opponent's going to be hard for him to do that. It's going to be hard for him to just go, supernova where he scores 40, because similar to how the Wolves can throw 3 or 4 different good wing defenders at a guy, OKC can do that too. I mean, their whole team is 6'5" guys who are fast and athletic. And yes, they're going to need a better version of Edwards, because I thought other than Randall in the first half, nobody really played well in that game. And I didn't think Randall played very well in the second half either. So they're going to need bigger games from Edwards. But I think you have to get that. Otherwise, you're not going to be in the series at all. So even if we assume he's going to step up, I just think you're going to need. I mean, Naz Reid was great for them all year. He went 1 for whatever.
11.
DiVincenzo has not been great all play, and neither has Naz Reid all playoffs. So if those guys don't step up, particularly how much they play with an 8-man rotation,
it becomes moot. You're right.
I just think you're not going to. Where is your advantage against the number 1 seed at that time?
So where are you? Are you as offended by the foul baiting of the MVP, as you mentioned, as many Wolves fans out there? And, it's funny because the debate I got into with JG makes it sound like I don't think there's any room for discussion about some of the nefarious stuff that SGA does. For me, it's a sense of there's a proportion issue, but it's consuming. I mean, I don't remember, even with Luka last year, I don't remember any one player consuming Wolves fans already after one game to the degree they seem consumed on SGA. And it's being fueled largely also nationally. There's somebody every day ranting about, hey, he's being officiated differently. So how bugged are you by this? How big a piece of it is it in your mind?
Well, no, I mean, also like Finch talked about it.
Yes.
It seems like one level further than it usually goes with some of these players. I think part of it is not that people haven't watched Oklahoma City, but it's not like, Wolves fans have watched 30 of his games this year. But this has been a talking point for so long, and now it's almost like, oh, I had heard about this, and now we're seeing it. And it's
affecting us directly.
Right. Usually when that's the case, it's like, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. This is worse than everyone kind of thought it would be. So I think that's been jarring for people. I also just think, first of all, he's an incredible player, like Luka, like you mentioned.
Yes, he is.
He doesn't need this help, but his game is so geared to that, both in terms of things he does intentionally and also just stylistically, because he's such a herky-jerky, hesitation dribble. He moves like water through this thing. And so I think he's great. That's what makes it frustrating, is like, this guy can score 35 on his own. He doesn't need to shoot 15 free throws, half of which have just been sort of handed to him. I also think there were just a couple so egregious calls in that game where even, the broadcast would look at the slow-mo replay of it and be like, yeah, I guess there was some contact on that. And so it gets tough, especially when you're at a disadvantage here. I mean, the Wolves were 3-1 underdogs in this series. And so there's maybe a feeling of like, how can we beat this team if we not only have to beat them, we have to beat the refs too. I do wonder if all this national talk of it and Finch talking about it and some of the players talking about it, if it will affect the whistle. I mean, that's clearly what Finch is hoping for.
That's what they're hoping for.
Right? I mean,
that's not unprecedented either.
It could be, whether just consciously, subconsciously, or whatever. I mean, these are human beings making these calls, and even if that stops them from making like 1 or 2 egregious calls, that could be enough to swing the game. But I also think, look, regardless of how many weird fouls he got, they shot like negative 50% on threes. Edwards didn't play that great. Their key bench guys all got outplayed by OKC's bench guys. You're just not going to win that. I think if it had been
0 fast break points and 19 turnovers.
Just the things you're going to need to do to beat an overwhelming favorite number 1 seed, they just didn't do any. So I do think it becomes, in Minnesota sports, that the number 1 thing a Minnesota sports fan would like to do is win. The number 2 thing a Minnesota sports fan would like to do is lose, but have a great excuse for it. And usually that's referees. And I throw myself into that mix too. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. But this sort of falls into that category a little bit, where it's like, it's more pleasing to get worked up about the fouls with SGA. And I think that's completely legitimate, than it is to go, boy, the Wolves didn't really play that well. They didn't shoot well. They got outplayed. And so I'm curious to see what the whistle is like tonight. Mm-hmm. And also, if this is a closer game into clutch time,
what happens then?
Because that's when it gets really frustrating. Tie game, a minute left, he gets fouled on an iffy one. Well, that changes the game.
Thanks for coming in.
Anytime.
Much appreciated. Great stuff as always. Aaron Gleeman joining us in studio. Don't forget, no top 5 at 5 today. Guardsy's off the hook because we expect a visit with Sam Mitchell, I'm guessing right off the golf course somewhere in the Atlanta, probably the Buckhead area of Atlanta, Georgia. Sam is next.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, is telling everyone, let's face it in therapy. By talking or texting with a supportive, licensed therapist at Talkspace, you can face whatever is holding you back, whether it's mental health symptoms, relationship drama, past trauma, bad habits, or another challenge that you need support to work through. It's easy to sign up. Just go to Talkspace.com and you'll be paired with a provider, typically within 48 hours. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule. Plus, Talkspace is in-network with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. Make your mental health a priority and start today. If you're not covered by insurance, get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80.